see it at home on TV, see it on the way to school, on the way everywhere. You go to Fenway Park, or you go to the Garden, or where you go to Pat's game. They're everywhere. Everywhere you look, there are advertisements. That's not a school environment. That's not an educational environment. And when we teach kids to come to school as sponges, to absorb. It's a safe spot for them to absorb. And we should not be corrupting that environment. I guess that's all I really have to say.
Thanks, Cliff. Probably we'll have some more discussion after each member gives their opinion. Karen?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I've thought a lot about this issue since it was first brought to the committee, and I realize I have an opinion that many people in this room might not understand, and I want to try to explain how I came to my opinion. And I do support this proposal, and I really appreciate the points of view that have been communicated to me. I've got a lot of people who've actually contacted me and given me both views and different arguments that I hadn't considered, and including some tonight, and I appreciate that. First of all, one of the arguments that has been presented is that there is a legal problem here. I'm quite happy accepting the building inspector's letter that indicates that he has the authority to allow us to make this decision. That's okay for me, and I think, and we had discussed this in a previous meeting, but I don't think it helps us to continue discussing whether we have the legal authority to continue to do this. We're still talking about whether we're going to approve this. We've arrived. All of those issues we've decided them. I'm no longer considering that to be an issue. The building inspector says we can move forward, and we've exhausted that. So that's no longer a consideration for me. What is a consideration for me is how we've arrived at this decision and all of the pros and cons related to how it affects the education of our children and what it does to our town, how it affects our citizens. The process that we've used to come to this stage here has been very collaborative and has involved a lot of different stakeholders, not just Parks and Rec, not just school committee and school administrators, but members of the community have had opportunity in various venues, including tonight, to add in what they think about this. And I think it's been pretty positive, actually, this is a charged issue for many people, and I think we've had time to consider this. We've had the Hillview involved. We've had the school committee, the Parks and Rec. We've had community members, businesses, people who own businesses in town have actually called me. So I think there has been a process whereby everyone has been able to have access to participate in the process of making this decision. So I feel good about that. If we came tonight without having that and everyone being able to participate, I would feel awful. However, there's one group that hasn't really participated in this, and this is our students. We don't know what they think about this. I personally have no idea what they think, which is why I like the idea of having a pilot. I would like to know what they think about this. When they go to sports games, what are they thinking? Are they bothered by the advertising? Are they too desensitized to even notice? So I need to answer that question, and that's why the pilot is acceptable to me. The third issue for me is whether Hillview accepts this, and the fact that they were involved in this decision was critical for me. And because they were engaged in a collaborative process and came to the decision to support this, adds a lot of weight to my viewpoint of this issue. The fourth piece of this that's important is that our school policy still exists, that if a sign is not tasteful or for whatever reason, the superintendent can say, no, this is not going up. And that, to me, is an important check and balance. This seems a little bit arbitrary and subjective because our superintendent may not be the same years down the road, and that's, of course, very personal. However, our school committee works really hard to select our superintendent and hopes that they exercise the judgment that would be acceptable in the community, and I believe that Ms. Willis, as well as anyone the school committee would consider decades from now, because I'm sure you'll be with us for a very long time, would exercise the same type of judgment. The fifth point I want to make is that political signs were everywhere in November. They were all over the place. Now, my husband prints political signs, so I have a different perspective on the issue of signage. It's been part of my life, sorry, Vinny, forever, and it's really nauseating, and I completely understand with the aesthetic argument. However, those signs are on private homes all over the historic area. They abut the school district. They were plastered on people's houses, huge, massive signs on private property. I'm not sure if there's a difference between whether that sign is on our school property, far away from the street, whether there's shrubbery or not, versus a political sign that is maybe 20 feet away that a student would see on their way. I don't know that there is a difference. I'm not sure, but I can tell you that I wouldn't want signs that are like that all over the place, which is why I support the pilot to see if a minimal number of signs is going to have any kind of impact on the aesthetic feel of the turf field, which to me is a professional, beautiful project that is a jewel in our town, to paraphrase one of the constituents who emailed some of our board members. We want to maintain that. So I think this is a good opportunity to figure out whether or not this looks right. And I hear that. I say that knowing that I live in Greenbrier Estates, which to me is an eyesore, and I wish it would be fixed. But I live on 28. I see the advertising. I am part of that. So my sense of aesthetics is kind of skewed because there's nothing I can do about where I live. But there are people who this matters for, and those voices need to be heard. That's why a pilot is important. And then the final point I would like to make is about the studies. I am a child health researcher epidemiologist. My entire career is devoted to perinatal epidemiology and the issues of development around child development. I am that member who says that these studies don't compel me, and they don't. And the reason for that is that a lot of these studies are about correlation, whether something is related from one factor to the other, not causality, that advertising is going to make a kid pick up a gun and bring it to school. There's so many other factors. It's an ecological problem that I'm not convinced that these particular signs are going to hurt our kids. I am not convinced, and maybe that's because I've read so many of these studies, and a lot of them are conflicting, but also because there are so many things that are in our schools that hurt other students, and they're students. We have bullies in our schools. We have, family problems that come from the home into the school. All of this makes a difference about how a child acts in their environment. And I'm not really convinced that the advertising is going to have really any effect at all. If it does, if a sign during a game itself is going to have an effect, I don't know how we would figure that out. I have not seen a single study that says having an advertising-free zone for part of the day is going to be different than being exposed to a sign as you turn right outside of the school. I don't know the difference, and maybe that's just me, but I just don't see it. And that's sort of where I land on that. I'm very pleased that this is a pilot. If it was not a pilot, I couldn't be in favor of this. But it's worth us trying to figure out if it works so that we can sponsor some of these projects. However, I would limit it so that it wouldn't become that slippery slope, because that is a very important consideration. We don't want to open the floodgate. This is North Reading. People live here because it's North Reading, and we want to maintain that character going forward. That's all.
Jerry?
I'm looking at this from a little different perspective. I think I've heard a lot of people say here tonight, and people talk to me privately, that why would somebody pay $1,000 to put an advertising banner on the bottom of the grandstand that nobody's going to see and you can't read from the street? And I think I have an answer to that question, at least I hope I do. I'm looking at this more as a sponsorship banner than I am an advertising. If you're going to spend $1,000 out of your advertising budget, especially in this day and age, you're going to do that to put the sign someplace where you're going to get the biggest bang for your value. most of the signs that are going to go on those grandstands, and I'm almost sure of this, are going to be the very same small businesses here in North Reading that contribute greatly now to different causes, different youth groups, different activities here in town, and are the same people when you open the transcript on Thanksgiving Day, or when you open the transcript in graduation, or when you open the transcript when there's a big sports team victory, you see all those little square advertisings in there. Those are the people. They don't put those in there for $40 or $50 a whack for advertising. They put those in there because they're part of the community, they feel proud to be part of the community, and they want their name there, and they want to see it there. And I honestly think that these sponsorship banners are consistent with that type of promotion. I think a lot of the businesses are going to be the very same ones you see, the small businesses we always rely on and count on in town. And they're going to want to see their name up there because they feel a part of what's going on in town here. A lot of them are businesses that have been here for 20, 30, 40 years, and they've been owned by the same person for all that time. I would consider, if I had the $1,000, no, but I would consider putting mine up there, not because I'm going to get a lot of business from kids that are running the track, but because you feel like you're a part of it. You've contributed to that. And I'll say this, that field, I mean, I know there was some objection to it, and there were questions about it, and we had some reservations about the school giving it up and turning it over to recreation. It's the best thing that I've done in 20 years here, and I've been involved that whole 20 years. I love it. I love seeing the kids out there. And talking about driving by with the hedges, every time I drive by that field, my wife's screaming at me because I'm looking over at whatever game is going on there. And she says, you're going to get us killed if you don't pay attention to the road. I'm just glad it's there in the center of town. I honestly don't think that the sponsorship banners are going to detract greatly from the appearance. I agree with Karen that if the Hillview had not gone along with this, then I probably wouldn't have gone along with it either. But I think it's worth the trial. I think the times have changed. There's not a lot of money out there. There's not a lot of revenue out there. And I think that as long as we can keep this thing in a controlled environment, we can raise some funds to perpetuate the use of that field, I think it'll be a positive thing.
Michael?
Are we limiting the signs to one sign per company? We are? Because that's one of my concerns. You know, if we don't sell those signs, and Stop and Shop and Walmart can come in, who don't represent my social values. They really represent what America is not all about, and that's what I'm concerned with those signs. And you're right, those small businesses, they may not be able to afford that $1,000 in this type of economy, but the Walmarts and the Stop and Shops could have 3 or 4 of those up and running. But that's one of my concerns. The other thing is, I am concerned with the track and field athletes. You know, is it going to get in their way? Are they going to be focused more on the signs as they're running a mile or a quarter-mile race on that track? And that does concern me a little bit. So, I think,
I heard the question, actually, and I'm not quite sure if I understand. Do you mean that they'll be concentrating on the advertisement?
Exactly. No, their focus. Their focus.
Because there will be a skirt there regardless.
But that could give
Yep.
us a home track advantage. If we're aware of that, and the other teams come in and they're looking at the signs.
It could.
It could give us a big advantage.
It
We
could.
could use
If
that.
it's not an advertising banner, there will still be a skirt. And I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you're worrying about them bumping into the.
Not as much, more the focus on that, and, right, as they're running by. So those are really my 2 concerns, the Walmarts and the Stop and Shops getting in there and not the smaller businesses. And then the whole focus on the athletes. You know, it's really, it affects them more than it does affect the bystander that's sitting in the stands or driving by, so.
If you look through the packet that we passed out, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe it's page 5. There's a list, and it's an update as to who has shown interest in putting a banner there. I don't currently even see, I do see a Walmart, I'm sorry, but this list shows you Hornet's Nest, O'Keefe Landscaping, Cervisi's Martial Arts, O'Keefe Roofing, Moynihan Lumber, Collins Overhead Door, there is Walmart, Viking Tree, Jay's Basement Barbers, Dick's Sporting Goods is a question mark. If it has a question mark, they haven't really committed. Andrea's Pizza, Center Cafe, Spencer Granite, Renaissance Realtors, all the, seems Sports Authority, Modell's Sporting Goods, once again with a question mark. Athletic Evolution, I'm not even sure who they are, and Reading Cooperative Bank.
The training.
Athletic training.
Okay,
Athletic evolution.
yes, you're correct. So most of them are the small businesses in town that have made commitments. The question
Well,
marks.
actually, they aren't. I I mean, if you look at this, it's, you have only 18 listed here.